If you have your Bible, right, you can turn with me to Genesis chapter 1. I feel like I preached the heck out of this passage. But let's just tear it apart some more. Is that okay? Yes. You know, and to me, that is a sign of sometimes the supernatural with the Bible. That it is this book that is so old, and yet it's so sophisticated, even with some of these stories being 6,000 years old, 4,000 years old. And you can tear it apart and it's still applicable to today. It still inspires you. There's still some deeper truth to be unpacked and pulled out and used and to bring us closer to God and closer to a better world. Okay, so Genesis chapter 1, all there? Yes. Shouldn't take you that long to flip there. This is probably a passage all of you read the most, right, on your way to Bible reading. You do it for, the first year, second year you try again and you never make it to the rest of the Bible, but you get to Genesis 1. Okay, so standing joke in our church now, right? I don't know whether it's a good joke. We probably shouldn't tell that anymore. It's like we're speaking into our future that people don't read the Bible. Okay, so Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 to 5, okay? So when God began to create the heavens and the earth was without shape or form. Okay, you've all been to class before, you know this, that actually the way this verse is written, original Greek, Hebrew, there was a heavens and the earth. And then there was a long pause, and it fell into an earth without shape or form. Dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters. God said, "Let there be light." And so light appeared, and God saw how good the light was. God separated light from darkness, and he named the light day and the darkness night. Okay, so the title of the message today is a church on the moon. Okay, so, it's quite funny, right? Whenever I'm embarking on something new, when it feels like, human beings, when we're transiting into a new season, a new era of life, I find that we always tend to get a little bit nostalgic. I will tend to get a little bit nostalgic. I tend to want to reach back into memory, into the past, to find the moments, the anchor points, some sort of explanation as to how I got here. The reasons, the moments that assure me that I'm on some sort of correct trajectory. Little traditions, little things that I've done before to help me remember that God has been and is still with us through our journey. Can you sort of relate this season to what I'm talking about? That as you are looking forward, there are moments where you're also doing a lot of glancing back. And I believe, one, it's our human way of coping with uncertainty. When a season is uncertain, when a goal is unmet, when a vision is unreached, right? When an era is about to make a huge transition, human beings, we start to grasp a little bit more for rules, for systems, for tradition, for an old practice, so that we can feel some sort of a semblance of stability, less anxiety, some sort of connectedness. So for example, right, one of the things I realize looking back, right, is whenever I feel a bit lost what to do with a new batch of youth leaders coming into church, right? They are new and they are different from previous batches because every batch has their own personality and team dynamic, right? I find that I will often default to getting them to write their dreams on Post-its. So you have that on your table, right? Take as many as you want later, okay? But I get them to do that in order to help them direct their vision and their confidence. But it also gives me, unknowingly, a feeling like every generation of leaders in our church is connected to one another. We can be different. There can be, every generation can look different, sound different, have different personalities, different challenges. But there's some true thread of ritual that binds us together. The idea of having dreams. The idea of writing our dreams down. And so this season, as we are finally launching, rededicating, reconstructing TiVo, I mean, those 3 words alone, right? It's not how many times we come up with different words and change plans because of delays, right? I mean, think about it. Reconstructing TiVo has taken a very long time. It's a long time coming. We've been talking about launching TiVo ever since before COVID. And then after COVID. And then after the crisis of losing our home. And then last year we thought, wow, we'll move in and then we can just launch it early in the year, correct? And then now it's August already. But finally, right? It's coming here. It's finally here, okay? And yet, despite it being a long time, you would think that by now we would feel comfortable. Like, this is going to be new. We're all excited, but there's still this undercurrent of uncertainty. There's always some sort of trepidation. There's always a little niggling doubt at the back of your mind that goes, what if TiVo doesn't become TiVo? What if after all this growth is still a struggle? Why finances are still a challenge? Why is it certain pieces are still not falling into place? What if this goes nowhere? What if it's just the 30 of us here eating the same buffet every year? Okay? What if we don't change the world? Even just a little bit. And so for me, right, for some reason, the memory of this thing, this post-it we used to do, seems to be the most appropriate way to dedicate our new home. And believe me, we went through a lot of ideas. We're like, should we write on the stage? Should we draw on the curtain? Should we do the windows? What should we do? And finally, somehow it came together. We're going to do a little wall over there that we can take down if we ever leave here, okay? But I was like, no, let's do this post-it thing also. Okay? You see, this moment in time for TiVo, right, is really, really something significant. Because this time around, this premise isn't just a new home. It's not like any other premise we've had before. This home represents a pivotal recreation point in our story, in our history. This is our regenesis. No premise holds this level of meaning as the one that we are dedicating today. The old us fell into, we were created, we somehow sprung up in a little place called Geylang. And then we wandered to a place called Jala Pemimpin. Then after that, we returned. I don't know, it's like Abraham going down to Egypt and going back up to Canaan, And then we went to City Hub, right? And then at some point, the old us seemed to fall into some sort of chaos, some sort of wilderness, some sort of nothingness, some sort of the feeling of insufficiency. But understand that even though it feels like nothingness, right? Even though it feels like everything has fallen to disarray, even in that, this substance, this old heaven and old earth, still carries the atoms, the DNA, the carbon of who we are. Something of who we are still remains in this old heavens and earth. And it's this old thing that God has reimagined and now is remaking us into something new, a new heavens and a new earth. Another memory that I seem to have defaulted to during the reconstruction of this home, right, is the moon. Now, I should explain this because some of you, like, hi, what's going on? Why are the leaders excited about this moon? Besides that the light looks nice, right? It's the nicest looking light fixture we have in the whole church, okay? So this whole idea came about when we were in Kallang days, okay? And in a time when we were nobodies, with nothing, less than what we have now. When we were less than 20, 30 people. Our leadership team was maybe less than 10 of all newbies, right? And what I used to say every week we have to inject faith into the church. We can grow. We're this little church, but we can grow, right? And so week after week, we had to inject faith into the church, speak faith in the church. And one of the crazy things I happened to say one week was, you know what? God is a God of the impossible. Jesus is someone whom, even if we reach the limits of our dreams, He still has something else better in the future. And I remember because there were so many fears that we had in our head, right? That, there are already too many churches in Singapore. Too many churches in the world. Why do we need another one, right? Then we would think like, how do we compete with people like City Harvest and Heart of God Church? We also think that they are so good, right? And then all the youth, they just go to that church, right? And so we would have to tell people, hey, don't worry, we won't run out of people to evangelize. We won't run out of places to plant new churches, even though other people have done it before. This church will grow, this church will expand, and if the earth runs out of territory for us to plant a church, then one day we will plant a church on the moon. Are you hearing me? Now, of course, this is just hyperbole, exaggeration, to make a point about God and us and our faith. But the principle of the idea, I'm still fully convicted of. And that is, God is a God whose thoughts are so great, so ambitious, so beyond, so evolving and elevating, that it's us who needs to catch up to how God thinks, how God believes, and how God imagines. That's why Isaiah says, your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Your ways are beyond my ways. So for me, the idea of a church on the moon may have started as a funny exaggeration. But now, for some reason, in this season of church, it's suddenly gone back 15 years and become the anchor that gives me comfort, that reminds me of the feeling of faith and possibility. And maybe it's kind of fitting, right, that the moon is in our crash too. Because even if I don't plant a church on the moon in my lifetime, then maybe our children and our future children's children and our youth will. You know, maybe some of you are the Philips that will bring that particular youth to Jesus. Maybe some of us are meant to be the Davids that prepare the materials for Solomon to build the next evolution of worship. Are you here? You see, we need to dream. You know, we need to have a lofty ambition of changing the world, not just making a dent. Not in this, you know, conqueristic, imperialistic Christianity way, but a little bit of this lofty, dreamy way of like, I want to change the world, not just make a dent. If not, you know what our vision statement will say? I don't know what will it say. It won't say change our world. It will say make a dent, start with me. Are you here with me? So listen, it is not too crazy to want to innovate Christianity and to create a progressive legacy for the next generation. You know, it may seem like the most foolish dream we could dream and think up because it is so hard. It would be easier to just be another mainstream church. But you got to understand this. Imagination is always hard and always foolish in the moment. At a point of time when that future doesn't exist yet, you know what? That's when it just seems so foolhardy. Right? You know, and that's when, listen, you have to reach into the past actually to create the future. You have to reach into your past for your anchors, for your DNA, for your atoms, your substance, the moments you had with God, the encounters and experiences with Jesus that transform your life, the situations where faith in God overrided your fear of reality. You know, traditions, rituals that help strengthen your belief in the impossible. Listen, all of you here have had that before. If not, you wouldn't be sitting here in the first place. You may have forgotten it. The memory of it may seem very far away. The feeling of it may seem very far away, but it is in you. Or you wouldn't be here. There's no other reason to sit your butt in a church except unless you encountered God. Am I correct? So maybe it's not so vivid. Maybe your spirituality has fallen into chaos, barrenness. But it is that same chaos and barrenness right now in your spirituality that was once the great heavens and the great earth. It is that same clay that was once upon a time wonder and life. You see, I think sometimes that's the problem with certain definitions of faith and futurism. You see, too much of the popular culture, the contemporary church version of that is everything is new. Everything is made new in God, right? Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's just stuff that gets remade and repurposed. Listen, in any season of your life, in any new era of a church, we are remade and repurposed by God. So, no matter how old you feel, some of you here, I know you feel old, right? You can repurpose. You see, the futures we imagine are always a reconstruction in part of our past. Can I repeat that? The futures we imagine are always a reconstruction in part of our past. I mean, look, here we are, right? Against all odds, today is the day, finally TiVo got reconstructed. Today is the day we begin again as a new heavens and new earth. Suddenly, it doesn't all seem so foolish anymore. Still hard, but not foolish. But again, as I look around on this nearly completed premise, I'm reaching back and asking myself, what are the core values that make TiVo TiVo? What are the key parts of our history we might need to leave behind, but what are the timeless values the moments in our story, the memorable lines, the memorable imagination that we need to bring forward with us into this next phase and this next life. You know, and what are the dreams I can have? The ambitions that I want to visualize, that are this new version, new vision of EVO Reconstructed. What is the church on the moon? That the 30 of us here need to build together. What is the kind of sanctuary that God is asking us to create? You see, I find nowadays, right, too many progressive Christians, they spend too much time running away from, rebelling against, or even trying to erase the past. And what happens? They build a future with no substance. It is a temporary illusion that quickly fizzles out and disappears into nothing. You know, now, I understand sometimes, yes, God does create something out of nothing, but most of the time in the Bible, even right in the first lines of the Bible, no. God used the substance of the old chaos to recreate something better. So I don't need to forgive and then forget the pains of the past. I don't need to erase the hurts and the trauma or whatever things we've been through. I don't need to cancel tradition or history. I may say, this is what happened, and this is not I will never bring forward again, but it happened. Are you here with me? Because God uses the substance of history and chaos to recreate the future. So changing and evolving can feel like we're building something out of nothing, because we're trying to imagine a future that doesn't exist yet. But that future we have never seen is still made from something from the previous future. We're simply taking things apart at their core substance, remolding it, and refocusing our imagination into something new. Okay? So, but of course, listen, I want you to understand, listen, God must still be the source of that creation. God must always be the source of the creation. And that's what Edwin was trying to bring across today to you about passion. You know, we have needs, we have resources, we have dreams that needs to be put in the hands of God. You know, our direction and our focus of all that clay and all that chaos and all that emo needs to be into the hands of the God who creates. And the rest will in time settle itself. The impact will one day be bigger than we can imagine if we can focus our passion and put it in the right hands. Amen? So I want to encourage you here today, we must imagine. We must take all that angst, all that struggle with the past, and we must then now focus it and put it into the hands of God. We must think His thoughts, feel His ways, believe the way He believes, and begin to create that future. Okay? Second thing I want to reflect about is the beauty and wonder of what is light. You see, in this story, right, there are three superior beings when it comes to creation. And all of them have to do with this idea of light. You see, the three superior beings I'm talking about in Genesis 1 are God, light itself, and actually us, human beings. Do you know that there are three pivotal points in the story of creation? Everyone say three. Okay. The first pivot happens in Genesis 1:1-5, when God began to create. The earth was without shape. God said, let there be light, and light appeared, and God saw how good light was. And then the world started to come to being again. Who was the source of light? It was God. Who was the creator? It was God. He was the superior being that everything else in the subsequent verses followed. Then in verse 14, another pivot happens, okay? God said, let there be light in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, the seasons and the days. And suddenly, the cycles of the world started to be put in place. And you will see after that, then, you know, the first time God created, trees sprang to life. The second time light came to being and separated and created the seasons, suddenly animals came into being. Again, the starting point was the light. And then after that, Genesis 1:26, this is where man appears. God suddenly says, let's make man, humanity, in our image, to resemble us so that they may take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock of the earth, and all the crawling things. And so God created humanity in God's own image. The divine image, God created them, male and female. God blessed them, said, be fertile and multiply, fill the earth, master it, blah, 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 blah. And then, boom, another era of creation starts to come to life. Yes. You see, everything starts with light. God is the superior originator of all imagination and creative power and light. And then light itself has this power. The moment there is light in creation, there is life. And then there was us. The Bible calls us little gods that God created in His image. These beings that carry God's invisible light and spirit, the source of all things in us. Right? You know, light is this amazing thing that is so strange. You know, light is the only thing I can think of right now that is both unseen and seen. Do you know this about light? That there's a spectrum of light that we cannot see, and there's a spectrum of light that we can see. And all of us carry this, both the unseen and the seen reality. Because, you see, anytime you read about this life filling the earth, it always started with some unseen source of light that suddenly became visible light, and everything started to spring forth from there. Yes. And I find it baffling, you know, amazing that this is the first story of the Bible. When it has to describe God, us, and the world, there's this overwhelming metaphor of light, imagination, and creation, and life. See, where there's light, there's creation. The source of all light is God, and God has put Himself in you. And so that is why human beings, right, we have this ability to control light and dark. We have this ability to control beauty and chaos. We have the capacity for creation and for destruction. I don't need to elaborate this or prove it in some physical. You understand this concept as I'm talking to you. Just look at the world around, right? Yes. Human beings determine the future of the world by our light. Yes. Whether that light is light or whether that light is darkness. Yes. The futures we create depends on what we do with our light. Every human being has it because God put it in us. Yes. The question is, what do we do with this light? This light has the power to create. This light has the power to destroy. So you, listen, will determine the future of the world and the future of our church by where you focus your light. Yes. If your light is connected to the source that is God, then great. But if it's plugged into everything in the world that is lesser than your greater self, then listen, how great that darkness will be. Yeah. You see, this is a very interesting line right in the Bible in Genesis. It says here, verse 16, God made the stars and two great lights. The larger light to rule over the day and the smaller light to rule over the night. Then God put them in the dome of the sky to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate light from darkness. So not only is there light, there is also light that is dark, correct? But then God also created smaller lights and greater lights. Smaller lights to be in the midst of darkness and greater lights to rule over the day. So besides being able to choose as human beings whether we are light that brings light or light that brings darkness, we also can choose, are we going to be greater light or lesser light? Are we going to be the light that lights the day? Or are we just going to be tiny blinks spluttering in a world that is engulfed with darkness? You see, I don't believe God called us to be lesser lights. I don't believe God called the church to be a sputtering light. They're struggling in the midst of a broken world. Because the Bible says when Jesus came, He came as the greater light. That darkness couldn't overcome Him. And it's Jesus who named the church the light of the world. The light of the world is not a description of a little light. It's the description of a great light. So what I want to say to each of you here today is don't live your life like a lesser light. Live your life like you are the greatest light of the world. Because God put an ability in you, in every single human, even the ones who don't know Him, has the light of God on the inside of them. But they have to choose. Will I be light that is light, or will I be light that is darkness? And then, why be the greater light? Or why be the lesser light?